what are all of the things that I need to take into consideration to understand my business financial requirements? How much is my burn rate? What is my gross margin? What is my net profit? Like, where is the financial sitting? And a lot of us start businesses with a product and an idea, but not really get into the nitty gritty of what are the financials. And I would say a financial forecast, in my opinion, people might disagree, but in my opinion, is even more important than the business plan, right? Because that is something I refer to daily. I am always looking at my financial forecast, like what is going on? Where is the money? How is it being spent? How can I ensure this business is sustainable?
Back. This is Max with the Black Income Creators Podcast, and today I'm joined with Kameese Davis, who will tell us a little bit about herself and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Cam Davis. I'm the founder and CEO of Nyla's. Nyla's is a high-performance textured hair wellness brand, and we focus on providing innovative products for women who are experiencing certain challenges with their hair. So whether that be things like hair loss, which is something that is quite prominent in the Black community amongst Black women, or things like seborrheic dermatitis and how that presents on the scalp. So we see ourselves as a solution-focused hair care brand.
And that's really interesting, because it's like so did you start a brand intentionally around sort of the alopecia, or did you want to start a brand? What was the journey?
Yeah, no. So the brand started because my daughter, named after my daughter Nyla, she had seborrheic dermatitis as a child. She still has it now, and very well managed. And I found that many of the products that I was typically accessing for my hair care was aggravating the symptoms of her seborrheic dermatitis. And then there was a couple of other kind of multifaceted things that were responsible for me deciding to start the brand. So the other thing was I really wanted Nyla to inherently feel that her hair was the definition of beauty. And of course, we're talking over a decade ago where, the rise of Afro texture has just started to really come into mainstream conversations. Prior to that, Black women were typically straightening our hair to conform with a standard of beauty, which kind of stated that, straighter hair was more desirable, more presentable, more professional, etc. And I didn't want Nyla to have to go down that road of learning and unlearning negative self-perceptions. So the brand was my way, when I initially launched it, of making sure she had access to really healthy products that wouldn't aggravate her skin condition, but was also formulated in a way that would enhance and demonstrate the beauty of a Afro textured hair more so to her. And then it expanded, because it was like, if I need this in the UK, then other women also are going to need this. And that was really the inspiration behind the brand and why I called it Nyla. But life has its challenges, life always wants to throw you a curveball. So just after launching the brand and being really excited about, having a hair care brand, I started to experience alopecia from the center of my hair. And anyone who has experienced hair loss, especially as a woman, how devastated it is. And put on top of that, you're a brand owner, it ain't gonna go down well, right? So, it's not conducive to having a brand experiencing hair loss. So I was saying that I really struggled with grappling with losing my hair. A lot of people focus on the cosmetic aspects of hair loss, but not a lot of people really take time to appreciate how much it can impact on your mental health. And it really had a massive impact on my mental health. I was desperately searching for a solution. So I was trying everything from, the products that were available in your typical chemist, so minoxidil, for example, right the way through to bloody rice water, right? And even though I knew that there was no real scientific basis, and that's what made me develop an appreciation for the fact that 50%, 50% of Black women will experience hair loss before the age of 40. That is a massive amount of us. And there are many factors that contribute to that number. But more importantly, once again, Black women had not been properly served. We'd been overlooked in the field of technological advancements and how advancements in raw materials can be incorporated into products for Black women and formulated in to take into consideration our unique characteristics of our hair. And also, in addition to our hair, our styling choices. And so with my understanding of cosmetics, having already built a brand, I was then really inspired through my own personal experience to now look at how I can develop products that were designed to help to resolve many of the common aggressors and common causes of hair loss. I'm really keen on saying I haven't solved hair loss, because if I did, I would be a billionaire. I'd be having conversations with Procter & Gamble and all of those people. So I haven't done that. But what I have done is I found a series of raw materials that have been clinically proven to help to cultivate a healthy hair growth environment and also invigorate stem cell regeneration for certain types of alopecia and reduce the hair loss for certain types of alopecia.
So it's quite niche then, and is that quite difficult for people to sort of grasp if they haven't done the research into sort of the varying types of alopecia, for example? Do they just sort of hear hair loss and then, do you see what I mean? I would struggle, I think, unless I've done the work, but a lot of people haven't at the beginning of their journeys.
Yeah, and that's why as a brand, we're really focused on how we can educate the consumer, because alopecia just means hair loss. That's all it means. But under the umbrella term, there are many forms of alopecia and there are many causes of alopecia. So, your cause of alopecia may be completely different to mine, so they can't necessarily be treated in the same way, which is why we've adopted a holistic approach to treating the individual, which also an important factor of that is diagnostics as well, to understand, okay, what is going on in the body and why are we experiencing hair loss here. We also, there's other things that we're doing as a brand. I can't say now because I'll have to, but there are other things that we're exploring with ensuring that information is available. One of the challenges that we have is the misinformation. It's really combating the online misinformation that's circulating in the community around how to resolve hair loss. And this is things like using castor oil, using water, putting eggs on our hair, all of these things where there are no scientific basis for its ability to, encourage stem cell regeneration of the follicle, or even, reduce inflammation, which is one of the major factors in hair loss for Black women. So whilst we are presenting something that's healthy and natural and plant-based and has got all of the research behind its efficacy, we're still finding challenges in getting our customers to understand the right steps and hair habits to take to halt and reverse your alopecia, or at the minimum, slow it down.
Yeah. And of course, lots of people will know you from your appearance on Dragon's Den. So what prompted that, first of all?
Well, I'm never going to leave that down. They really done me wrong with that thumbnail. So what prompted that? The year that I applied for Dragon's Den, I just read a book by Shonda Rhimes called The Year of Yes.
Yes, I've read it.
Love it, right? Amazing book. And I loved it. And I used to be, I'd say I'm still on my journey of recovering from this behavior type, but I will tell myself no before anyone else did. So I'd be like, no, I can't do that. Oh no, I shouldn't. Oh no, they're not gonna accept me. So any opportunity that comes my way, I'm just gonna say yes. And I was watching Dragon's Den, as you do with the family, and then they came up on the end, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to apply. And I was like, yes. And that was it, really. I submitted my application and didn't think anything of it. A few months later, I had a call from the production team. They loved the application, and I went through the whole shortlisting process. And several months later, I walked into the den.
And talk us through the experience, because obviously we just see you walking in.
Yes.
But in terms of the prep for that, so to me,
Yes.
it's like there's quite a lot of prep that needs to go into like your presentation. I don't know, maybe financials that they ask for that we don't see, to me, obviously.
I mean, I'm one of those TV warriors. Can you say, or used to be, I'd always be shouting at the screen, like, say this, how can you not know your numbers? How can you?
Yeah.
So it was, when it was my turn to go into the den, I practiced. I was a solopreneur in this space. I didn't have a team. I didn't have financials. I didn't have anything. It was just me and a concept. And pretty much all of the marketing that I had done up to that point was completely word of mouth. So it was a hell of a lot of practice, practicing in the mirror, making sure that I had my financials right, and also reaching out to my network. So, in my network, there were accountants and there are advisors in various facets that I was able to kind of talk to understand exactly how to structure my answers to the questions should they be presented, and taking time to, think if I was in their position, if I was on the other end of that chair, what are the questions that I would want to ask of a potential entrepreneur, and doing a lot of rewatching of previous shows just to understand what are the personality types, what are the different dragons looking for, and how do I, most importantly, present this very novel idea to them in a way that they could understand the wider scope and opportunity of the business. So, it was very daunting. Believe it or not, I am an introvert. Not a lot of people believe me. Recovering, but I am an introvert. So the prospect of, at the time, of being in front of like millions of people was really, really daunting for me. Which is why I had to make sure that at least my presentation, would be strong, because I knew my numbers weren't. My numbers were not strong at all. And in fact, in hindsight, I think had I gotten into the den even 12 months later, it would have been a completely different conversation in terms of their offer.
Yeah. And a couple of things that you said there. First of all, like we have, we're developing a directory, because I think when you are a solopreneur, it's so difficult. You don't have that team that knows your business inside and out. And you do need to be able to reach out to accountants, to lawyers, intellectual property lawyers, whatever it may be, to help support you in any kind of bid, or, it's very, very difficult to do everything well, the delivery, Absolutely. The marketing, whatever. So I think it's really important to have that team. And then I think something around when you pitched, like you said, it's like if you'd pitched 12 months later, it would have been a completely different pitch. You'd have been completely different. The numbers would have been different.
Yeah. I think the pitch would have been the same. It was just the numbers that would have demonstrated that there was a market. And there was an appetite for the market. And sadly, when I went into the den, the numbers that I had at the time, being that I was just completely word of mouth, I had absolutely no budget for marketing, and in many respects didn't understand marketing matrix, right? So, once I'd kind of learned that, because I had to learn as I go, and then we started to understand, okay, what are the metrics then, and how do we capitalize on and growing and scaling these metrics? The business is completely transformed as a result. So, am I happy I did it? Absolutely. In hindsight, if I could change anything, it would have just been that I would have went in at a different time. I didn't take her offer. Not a lot of people know it, but I did turn down the offer after having conversations and doing some more due diligence into the contract. I realized that actually that wasn't conducive to where I wanted to take the brand. So I turned it down and went it alone for a couple of years. And, last year we got a significant investment into the business, and it's worked out.
And was the offer from Asara?
It was from Sarah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And in terms of, like you say, so you took the offer on the show, but then later you were like, you know what, not quite right for me, which is fair.
Yeah, I mean, I would always take the offer on the show, and I would encourage a lot of people to take the offer on the show, because you then have the opportunity to have a conversation again. If you turn down the offer on the show, you don't get the opportunity to have a conversation. That's it. You walk out, you never see them again. So if you're thinking no, just say yes and see if there's any way that you can change the offer and the terms of the offer outside of the lights and the cameras. But unfortunately for me, even though we had that conversation, we did amend the terms. There were still things about the term sheet that I just didn't want to agree to at the time, and I turned it down.
So the year of yes really worked for you then?
Yes. Yeah. Until that one no. It's like, yeah, nah.
Well, no, but I think that's the whole point. I mean, from what I remember of the book, I read it years ago, but from what I remember of the book, it's like it is to say yes until it's very clear that it is a no, rather than sort of immediately saying no, as you said, was your sort of like go-to position to sort of say no before someone else says no. So I think it really did work for you. And like you said, even in the den, people should say yes, and then it gives them the opportunity to have a further conversation and then rework the terms. And what people typically do is like they hear, I'll give you, 400,000 for 40%. And they're like, no way. Whereas they could go away and say 400,000 for 10%. They could have that conversation outside that they can't have inside the den because it's a TV show.
And outside of the den, you're able to also present more information, because inside the den, everything is off the cuff, right? You're not allowed to go to any numbers. You can't do that. So outside of the den, you have the opportunity to do due diligence in a way that will typically be done by angels and VC investors. And then you can both decide, okay, can we move forward? Can we amend the terms? Can we not? Whatever. But you've given yourself the opportunity for a further conversation.
And even in terms of the fact that a lot of your marketing up until then had been word of mouth, being on the show must have obviously increased your web presence, like your web visits, etc. So
the night of my appearance on the show, I just remember literally, I think it was like halfway through the segment, I just kept hearing the phone chime, like my website was just chiming. And then after the show, it went crazy, and it was like crazy for at least a month. And even now, the episodes still are on YouTube and available for people to watch. It's being shown in other countries. I get messages from people in like Sweden, America, Brazil, South Africa saying they just watched the show. And more importantly, it's seeing how many people have been inspired by that segment. Women in business, Black women in business have found that really inspirational. And that's something that's quite dear to my heart. Like being in a position where I, as a Black woman, can inspire other Black women to, step into their purpose and execute on their business ideas is an incredible privilege and an honor, and something that I don't take lightly. So I'm really, really honored that I've been able to contribute to the global Black economy, even in that small way. I'm really honored.
That's great. And in terms of, you sort of said that you did take some investment. Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah, so last year, no, year before.
2023.
2023. We were given a investment that was made up of corporates, of VCs, and an amazing pool of angel investors. And it was the biggest investment given to a Black woman in the Midlands. Now, something, again, I'm very proud of. However, there is a caveat. I think in 2023, it's a shame that that was the biggest investment given to a Black woman. And I think it highlights that there definitely needs to be changes made in the investment landscape. And it's something that has got me in trouble because I'm like, yes, it's good, but
You know, it's interesting because I think I started off sort of asking you about, you know, a niche business, you know, a business where the majority of your audience look a certain way, etc. And I've pitched to investors in the past, various stages of my career, and it's almost like you say, getting them over the hurdle of, yeah, but how big is that market? You know, they don't understand how much Black women spend on certain things anyway, because they don't know that market. So they're thinking the numbers are small, but actually the pound or the dollar amount is a lot larger than you realize.
Nah, I think there's that because if you do your research, you're able to present to them, look, this is a, you know, £5.4 billion market, annual growth rate that exceeds many other markets in this space. Like, it's huge. And I think they get it. I think the challenges that we have is that people invest in people that are inherently familiar to them. It's not necessarily about discrimination and racism all the time. And I'm not saying that's there. It's there, right? But I'm saying that we shouldn't always immediately assume that is the problem. Sometimes it's actually, I just don't understand this. I just don't get it. And I am more inclined to invest in something that reminds me of me, right? Something that I invest. And I think it highlights the importance of not only challenging some of the unconscious biases and really helping investors to understand that Black people can contribute £72 billion to the UK economy. It's also about making sure that there are Black investors too, right? We need Black investors. We need people that are going to understand what are the challenges or the opportunities that are confronting our market, and how can we as a community invest more into those opportunities. And that's common. There are, you know, VCs that invest in typically underrepresented founders globally, although they are being challenged now, unfortunately, especially in America. There are those opportunities. There's not enough. As Kendrick would say, there's not enough, right? So we just need more.
Because of the history, a lot of us have a mistrust of a lot of the sorts of setups that are there. So we don't do the year of yes. We literally just say, well, they're gonna say no anyway, so let me not even bother. We don't partner as much, so we tend to be solopreneurs just because maybe we've been burnt in the past or whatever, and we just think, rather go it alone. I trust myself. I don't necessarily trust others. So it's like, you know, there is sort of like some of it's sociological and some of it's kind of like historical. So, you know, proven. So it was really quite difficult for me because I was thinking, I wanted to say the banks were the ones that were going to say, the other ones that do say no, but actually it wasn't what I found once I'd done the research. I found that Black women don't ask. Yeah, we don't ask for help.
We don't ask for help. And there's, you know, not asking because of whatever barriers that might confront us as an individual or as a community as to why we don't ask for help. But then also, we don't know, right? I think that's a huge issue too, not having an understanding of how business finances work and who to approach and how to approach. I think that's one of the challenges. So when I started my business, you know, there was so many stories around, you know, I started my business with £100 and now it's a multi-million-pound franchise. And that's misleading because it makes people think, okay, you literally scaled your business with £100. I don't know, call me naive, but back then that's how they would present the stories. No one says, yes, I started with £100 and yes, it was an idea, but then I got a grant. And then I got bank finance, and then I got an investment, and that enabled me to scale, and that enabled me to get a team. Like, that whole journey needs to be shared and communicated thoroughly so that when people are starting enterprises, they understand what are the opportunities here, what are the challenges here, and what are the breadth of financial institutions that I need to familiarize myself with so that I can adequately fund my business to get it to the point where it's self-sufficient. And I think that's where there's a requirement, I think, for more information in the community.
And I
Yeah.
think, we do hear these stories from like £100 to sort of like a billionaire all the time. And I think for me, I mean, I learned quite young. So I was married and I started my first business and then I got a divorce. So the business model relied on the fact that I had another income coming into the house, and therefore I didn't have to take money out of the business for the business to survive for the first year or two. I couldn't have started a business without it. So then it failed when I got divorced because then I had to, do you see what I mean? So I think it's things like that. So people don't think about, the family that supports them, or, the partner that might support them in those initial stages, and then like you say, grants,
Yeah.
loans, etc., that are
Yeah.
available to them. They
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
On even things like, okay, what is a cash flow forecast? What is a cash flow forecast? What does that look like? What are all of the things that I need to take into consideration to understand my business financial requirements? How much is my burn rate? What is my gross margin? What is my net profit? Like, where is the financial sitting? And a lot of us start businesses with a product and an idea, but not really get into the nitty gritty of what are the financials. And I would say a financial forecast, in my opinion, people might disagree, but in my opinion, is even more important than the business plan, right? Because that is something I refer to daily. I am always looking at my financial forecast, like what is going on? Where is the money? How is it being spent? How can I ensure this business is sustainable? The business plan, I can't tell you the last time I looked at that.
Well, that's just, yeah. I mean, I think that's something that we all learn to write, and then, like you say, it's ignored. It's almost like a wish list thing. And in terms of the cash forecast, it can help people with things like, for example, how much should I charge? Because pricing is where a lot of people go wrong, especially when it's like a new business and they price too low. You can't raise prices afterwards. You can't go from a £5 to 30 quid, which is what you need.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? There's just no way. And I think if you haven't got a cash flow, a forecast, an understanding of how long you need to be able to survive before the business will crash and burn, it's really difficult. So I think that's useful for people to hear a little bit around sort of knowing their numbers. And people are scared of numbers. I think in their minds they're thinking it's finance. I don't know finance, as if it's some sort of thing. But it's like, actually, it's like people who are in debt don't like to look at their bank accounts because they don't want to see how much in debt they are. But you have to know the numbers to resolve the issue.
You have to. And I think any new thing is daunting, right? When I first looked at a financial forecast, I'm like, good. Any new thing is daunting, but you have to believe in your capacity to learn it. And that's a really powerful thing. And that takes away the fear of growth, right? Like, I know I don't know it now. I have no idea, but I believe in my capacity to learn this. And I'm going to take each step one at a time, and I'm going to learn until this is something that I'm very diligent in, and I have a thorough and workable understanding in. And that's kind of my mindset and how I approach things.
And how do you combat the sort of the solopreneur, mumpreneur kind of, because that is something where you kind of, it can be quite isolating for a lot of people. Do you know what I mean? You don't have that thing that you have in the office where you're bouncing off your colleagues and you can kind of say, oh, how do you do?
I mean, we now have a team. It has been amazing having people who specialize in different facets of the business needs. So we're an amazing team now. But when I didn't have that, when I was just an entrepreneur, it was hard. Like it was constant. I remember I had 2 businesses, right? And I was constantly working and constantly having to do things, but I took things at a step. Everything was like step by step. So initially it was just me, and then the business started to make enough money for me to hire a consultant to take over our social media. So then our consultant started to take over social media, and then I was able to make some more money, and then I was able to hire another consultant who would take care of marketing. And then we grew a little bit more, and then I was able to hire. So I didn't take any money from the business for years. But it's understanding that at every stage of your business, who can you call into your business? If it's not a full-time employee, is it a consultant? Is it AI? Is it someone overseas that offers, really good work, but for a more affordable price? You need to really look at what's available to you. So people per hour and Fiverr were my best friends, right? When I was like, the amount of, I found some horrible freelancers there, but I also found some amazing freelancers on those platforms. So it's a trial and error. And, I failed so many times. I can't tell you the amount of times I failed in this business. A lot of people think it was just like, yay, she made, no, it was, mistake after mistake, failure after failure, heartache after heartache. And I would give myself one day to sit in my misery. That is it.
Chocolate.
And then again, one chocolate, ice cream, whatever it was, chips, whatever's going to give me that endorphin rush. And then
to move on.
Back at it,
Yeah. And I think, like you say, when you're at that stage of a business and it hasn't got, it's like a band, when a band starts and everybody just says, oh, they're an overnight success. And they're like, yeah, 30 years later, however long it took. It's the same thing with the business. Everybody sees like, oh, they probably assume that you went on Dragon's Den and that's what made your business like an overnight success. It grew your business, but your business was already, functioning quite well. But I think people don't understand the stress that can go into the sort of constant failures that you experience at the, usually at the beginning or the growth end of a business. So I'm glad to say that I'm glad to see that you got through that.
The growing pains are real. But failure are only lessons. Failure is feedback. That is it. And the only time you fail is when you stay down. And I really believe that. I really, really do.
You talked a bit about sort of pay people per hour and Fiverr. So I've used both. People per hour didn't work for me, but I think I was an early adopter and it hadn't quite, worked thing. And so I used more Upwork and Fiverr, and same experience. It's like sometimes you get some real gems and they sort of like work quickly, get your vision and sort things out really quickly. And other times you're just like, you're chasing people who are based somewhere else in the world for your product that you've asked for. And they disappeared basically with your money, which is, I know it's in escrow, but there's just something about the way things are done that are, can be.
Yeah.
But I think we are moving to a world where a lot of things will be virtual and remote. We won't be employing as many people necessarily in the UK. Just because it's so prohibitive when you're starting out to be paying UK.
Yeah. And the world is, the internet has opened up a world of talent to us. So if it's more affordable to get that talent somewhere else, you have to do what works for you. Obviously it's always nice to be able to contribute to the economy in which you live. But sometimes it's not always practical. It's not always practical to do that. So you have to find the ways in which you can grow your business at a pace that's suitable for your circumstance.
I don't really believe in regrets, but are there any things that you did on the journey that you think if I was to do that again, I wouldn't do that in the same way? So not a regret because everything's a lesson, but things that you're kind of like.
I mean, hindsight is beautiful, right? Hindsight's funny. Are there any things that I would do differently? Yes. So one of the things that I would have done differently is I would have definitely saw Dragon's Den as more of a marketing opportunity as opposed to an investment strategy, because it's a fantastic marketing opportunity. And I would have put systems in place to create a funnel to capture all of that data and all of that interest and remarket to that interest and that data in a way that I just didn't know how to when I initially went on the show. If there's ways that I could have, I would have done that differently. Sorry, I digress. I would have done that differently. Other things that I would have done differently, I probably would have tried to get finance a lot quicker. I think when I had the concept for the business, it was the very early stages of the business. There was less competition. And I think had I, with all of the challenges, but had I at least started the fundraising journey, I think we could have all things being well, positioned the brand to have been a leader a lot quicker than now. Any other regrets? But no regrets in this business, because everything that I've experienced in this business has contributed to my acumen as a Black woman. So whether that is things that were positive, whether things that were challenging, and I've had to really dig deep to overcome those things, those challenging times have really been the pivotal points in highlighting how creative I can be, how much I can think outside of the box, how resilient I am, how excellent I am in terms of communicating and finding resources. So no, sorry.
No. I mean, I think that's it. It's like, just what would you have done differently? I don't believe that people should have regrets, because you did the best with the information you had at the time. So I don't think it's a regret thing. In terms of market, so there's two things I really want to understand. Is one, is this a competitive market? Because the impression we get from the outside is like this market seems to be quite saturated.
Yeah, I think the cosmetic space is saturated, right? So whether you are in the subsection of Black hair or the wider cosmetic market, there's a lot of options for people. However, I think that if you are introducing a brand and a concept that is based on a unique set of principles, then you can still make it work. Yeah, it's more challenging. Obviously, if there wasn't as much competition, there's not a lot of places for people to go. But it's about identifying your USP. Where is there a space in the market, and how can you capitalize on that? Because there's always opportunities, in my opinion.
And is the brand solely online, or is this something that's available in store?
So we were in store. We were available in 2 of the largest retailers in the UK, Kameese and Superdrug, and that was great for profile and brand credibility and all of the nice looking things. It was amazing for. From a financial perspective, it was a little bit more challenging for a smaller brand, because not a lot of people recognize that retailers do charge smaller brands for shelf space, right? You're charged for shelf space, you are charged for promotions, they charge you for a lot of things. And that really ate into any profit that we were making from them, to the point where sometimes it was probably loss making. And unless you're like a really massive brand and you can negotiate really strong and favorable terms because you're already a household name and so many people are looking for you anyway, retail can be quite challenging. You have to know what you're doing. And so we made the decision that it was the wrong time for us to be in retail space. And in fact, in the UK, when we're taking into consideration the shopping habits that are growing, a lot more people are shopping online. A lot more people are discovering new brands online, with the accessibility of 24-hour shipping or 48-hour shipping. There's no reason to rely upon a retailer and giving them 50% of your margin. It's unnecessary, in our opinion. And that's just the landscape of the UK based on our distributor research. However, we have ambitions for internationalization. I think a lot of people do. We have our sights on markets where there is more concentration, let's say, of our demographics. So we will definitely be looking at opportunities for retail partnerships.
You said around sort of Boots and Superdrug and how, like you say, they do charge quite a bit for you to be in there and to run like promotions and stuff like that. Did that lead to sort of your decision around Holland and Barrett and not going down that direction?
Oh no, Holland and Barrett were taking me for idiots. So handed, but there's like this woman's an idiot. I'm gonna take her for fool. And I was like, mate, it's not happening. But the amount that they wanted to charge me, I was like, so it was just like, yeah, absolutely not. Like, I will not go into your store on your and that's another thing about I think myself as an entrepreneur. Some people might say it's the wrong decision. I don't know. I will never know. But for me, it was right at the time. I am not going to enter into any agreement with anybody where I feel that you are not respecting my product, me as a founder, and the market, right? Because I am really passionate about ensuring that Black women have access to healthy and effective products. I am really passionate about ensuring that the needs of our core audience are being addressed. And if I will not partner with a partner who I feel is just interested in capitalizing on that for financial gain, I also will not partner with somebody who doesn't see the value of our brand and wants to devalue my brand. I will not allow anyone to devalue the brand.
We were just talking about markets and sort of thinking about how to move into markets such as the US. I know that a lot of British brands have tried to do it, some successfully and some not so successfully. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
So for us, it's just being really strategic as to where we're moving first. You know, if we look at the US, it's a massive scale, and we can't possibly consider tackling every state, you know, because we just don't have the cash flow and the finances to do so. So we really started to look at deep demographic research dive into, okay, where is our key audience concentrated? And then we realized, okay, that's the South. And then also within the South, where in the South do we need to be? So where do Black people have the best earning potential? Where is the economy upcoming and thriving? Where is there actually less competition? You know, which state is a little bit further removed from the UK, so the UK will be seen as more of a novelty. So a lot of people would think automatically Atlanta. But actually our research at Texas.
I told you that.
I was trying to keep it quiet and not telling people. But
I don't have just from knowing the States. So it's like Houston, definitely Austin, Houston, those kind of cities.
Austin and Dallas, is where we need to be. So we're going to start initially with the digital strategy, getting people familiar with the brand digitally, awareness strategy, you know, lots of, me not tell them what me I go do, but
the takeaway that I'd want people to have is that it's no use just trying to move into a market without doing a proper due diligence and research and understanding. I mean, you have a very clear demographic. But if you're moving into a new market, making sure that aligns, because if you enter Atlanta is saturated with, you know, that, you know, and, you know, you, like you said, you want a state that is big enough, it's up and coming in terms of Black dollar spending power. You want all of that. Atlanta's kind of already there. Yeah, so.
And then, don't get me wrong, incredible amount of opportunity, but we need to take into consideration what is the limitations of our cash flow, what are our brand limitations, and unfortunately for us, we are not in a position to tackle Atlanta yet and really have a strong foothold. So the next best place for us is, but there's a lot of things to take into consideration, even things like the accent, right? Yes, I have a northern, if you could say, UK accent. How is that going to land in America? Are Americans going to be excited by and attracted to the novelty of my accent, or are they going to find it annoying because it's northern? So there are all of those little things that can be mixed need to be thoroughly understood, because then you know how to thoroughly and appropriately enter into that and penetrate that market. So we've done a lot of research, and we've been fortunate to have some incredible neds on our brand. And that's another thing as well. I will say, find yourself some business advisors that are very established in some sections of your business needs. So we have an amazing CFO who is, a marketing director of finance for huge retail chains like Asda George. We have the formidable Bob Holt, who is the former CEO of Revolution Beauty. And in fact, the other day I had a conversation with Deborah Pellman, who is the former CEO of Revlon, and her family have large investment stakes in Revlon. So it's these people who you might think are out of reach, you actually never know by just contacting them, or who knows who, or how you can have an introduction, because they're able to open doors for you that you wouldn't necessarily be able to open by yourself. And they also have an incredible wealth of experience that you can tap into that will enhance your business processes.
I think it's that thing of being humble enough to say, I don't know everything. And I think some entrepreneurs struggle with that.
Really? You see, I'm the first to say, I'm an annoyer. I'm the first, sorry, I keep entering into the power, but I'm the first to say, I don't know. And again, what I believe about myself is I have the capacity to learn, not that I know it, but I have the capacity to learn it. And I think by taking that approach, I am able to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this, but I'll get comfortable. Or can you help me with this? Can you help me to understand? And I think that's a really important trait for an entrepreneur.
I think, yeah, the ability to ask for help. And I
Yeah.
think that's typically where I've seen Black female entrepreneurs struggle the most, is
Yeah.
the ability to ask for help and just
Yeah.
say, I don't know what to do, how to do, who to approach, who to ask for help. But at least if they've got, that thing of like you say, Neds, or maybe even like just a mentor that can help guide you. They don't need to know your business inside out, but they need to be able to guide you and say, well, actually, you're not even at a growth stage. You're still at the product development stage. You need to take a step back before you're trying to put in all this marketing and you haven't quite, you always need somebody to kind of keep you accountable a lot of the time, as opposed to, so it's been, and have you found that people are, or, nearly always willing to support where you've asked for help?
No, people are not always willing to support, a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people say they want to help, and it's not that they don't want to. They have their own businesses. They have their own lives. They don't have time. And so you have to get comfortable with people saying no. You have to be comfortable with being left unseen. I can't tell you how many times I've been left unseen. Do you know what I mean? Like, why are you not even going to tell me no? You're just going to be like, But it's not nice, but I'm like, okay, on to the next. If you don't have the time or capacity to support me, I'm not going to take it personally. I don't know what's going on in your life. You might not like me. It's possible. I don't know how, but it's possible, right? And I just have to keep on going till I find someone who's like, you know what? Yeah. So my first angel investor, my biggest angel investor, when I initially approached him, I approached him for help. I was like, look, this is my idea. Here's my pitch deck. What do you think of my pitch deck? You get investment all the time. I didn't want investment from him. I wanted investment from him, but I wanted his advice on my pitch. And he gave me advice and he sat through my pitch. And then I was like, okay, you are the head of this £300 million international company. Can I come to your headquarters one day and just look at what it's like running something at this scale? And he was like, yeah, sure. Do you know what I mean? And then I went and I spoke to different members of his team in different departments. And then before I knew it, he came to me and he was like, you know what? I like your tenacity. I'm going to invest in you.
What's next for the brand?
So we're soon to launch our holistic hair wellness products and services. One of the things that we realized, as mentioned earlier, that there isn't a tested and holistic form of treatment for Black women who are experiencing alopecia and hair loss. And so we have worked extensively with a trichologist, cosmetic formulators, and nutritionalist, and who else on this, and dermatologist and pharmacist. to develop a holistic package of support, which takes women from diagnostic, which includes testing, various testing, all the way through to treating them through nutrition, through supplements, through topical products, but also back to referrals to GPs if needs be, but referrals to GP now armed with the right information and support so that they can advocate for themselves. So we will launch that new proposition at the end of this quarter, and that is something that we're really excited about because we're seeing a massive appetite for that type of provision for women of colour. And, you know, we are looking at a brand elasticity. So where else can we go under the wellness umbrella? And we've identified a few other core demographics that we think we can support and help.
And in terms of like cost, because I think that's something else that people look at and they might think that something's prohibitive, etc. So in terms of products and how long products last, typically how long do the products last? Because I think people look at it and think, oh, that's a lot for now, you know, for a week. But it's not for a week.
No. Our products are really, really concentrated. So a little goes a long way. Typically our shampoo and conditioner lasts about 3 to 4 months. And our serums, if used at recommended amount, is designed to last for a month. And our leave-in products are designed to last for about 6 to 8 weeks, dependent on use. So it's not a lot. Well, one of the things that I always kind of say, not just as a founder, but just it's something to be aware of, right? 80% of products marketed to Black women has been tested and proven to be dangerously toxic. Or should I say that 80% of the products tested for Black women were proven to be dangerously toxic. And these are things such as carcinogenics, which we all know of, endocrine disruptors. And when we take into consideration some of the things that are primarily affecting Black women, there's a definite enough research to suggest that there's a link with the products that we're using. So can you put a price on health and wellness? I would say not, right? Another thing to take into consideration is understanding supply chain, right? I think once we understand supply chain, we can understand product cost and we can understand raw ingredients. If you can go to your typical beauty supply store and pick up a 500 ml, so half a litre of product for less than £4, and everybody in that supply chain has managed to make money and profit from the £4, you have to really scrutinize what is in this ingredient. What is it? Because this ingredient is so cheap that I can have so much of it, and at least 4 or 5 people, different businesses, packaging suppliers, label suppliers, manufacturers, brand, and retailer can make money off this little $4.99 sumdrum, right? And a lot of the time, what we don't understand is we are taking, or they are taking, biochemical waste. They are, what's the word I want to say? They're taking biochemical waste. They are repurposing that biochemical waste. They are calling it a cosmetic ingredient, and they're putting it in your products that you're using. So when you want to argue about price, are you comfortable paying $4.99 for something that's going to eventually make you sick? Or do you want to pay a little bit more money for something that will work, or something that prioritizes your health? And that's a decision that I can't make. All I can say is I am going to provide the market with a healthy alternative. And because we're using really concentrated ingredients that have been proven by scientists in terms of its efficacy, that are plant-based and natural, and they do focus on wellness, that costs me. My product cost is high. And, you know, I wish we could do it in a more affordable way, but affordable products are not good ingredients. They're not.
That makes a lot of sense. And finally, sort of, where can people find you typically? So where can they find the products and where can they find you?
So we are available online, and it's nylasnaturals.com. You can find our products there. You can find our products on Amazon. You can also find us on all social media accounts, which our marketing team are doing really well managing. And so, we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as nyla.uk. We don't just post pictures of influencers with our hair. We post real women who have used our products. We also post a lot of information. We have conversations with dermatologists, trichologists, nutritionalists. Like, I am so passionate about arming our community with the right information. So even if you choose not to buy, there's a wealth of information available for you on our social media channels. We're really excited. Something I didn't mention, we took 13 women who were experiencing various types of hair loss and took them through a hair regrowth journey using our products. And all of those women have started to yield positive results, and all of those women would definitely have said they would definitely buy the products again. So we're really excited to launch that campaign, which is kind of like your Dove Real Women campaign. So that's something that I'm really proud about.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you.
I think moving forward, just spell Nyla, because I think that's the other thing, just to make sure that people who are listening.
Of course. So Nyla is Nylah. So November Yankee Lima Alpha Hotel. And online it's nylasnaturals.com, and on social media it's nyla.uk.